Hey there. The tagline of 94 release Pulp Fiction says it's three stories about one story. The movie has a novelistic approach because it is divided into three chapters along with a prologue and an epilogue. Each chapter has a different protagonist and an entirely distinct plot from the other two. Since black and white times, some movies had the basic three-act structure along with a prologue and an epilogue. But Pulp Fiction took it a step further and literally it made the audience aware of each chapters by displaying the chapter headings. Is that it? No. It has a circular structure too, along with this novelistic approach. Film buffs and pundits mostly say that there weren't any notable movies before Pulp Fiction which played around with the chronology of the narrative. Well, I beg to differ. Wait, if the description below says the episode falls under the category Old is Gold, and I'm supposed to talk about Adoor Gopalakrishnan's Anantaram, released in 1987. So have you figured out why I'm talking to you about Pulp Fiction? Why? Coming up. We shall get back to Pulp Fiction in a few minutes. But now, let's focus on Anantaram. I personally connect myself a lot to two movie characters, Ajayan from Anantaram and Ved from Tamasha. Wait, uh, I have to note that down somewhere. I have to do a video on Tamasha someday. For now, let's follow Ajayan. Ajayan, also known as Ajay Kumar, is a protagonist of Anandaram. The movie begins, develops, and ends through his monologue. So, even though the word Anandaram means hereafter, Adoor sir gave it an additional English title when he sent the subtitle version to all the foreign film festivals. Monologue. Till the midpoint, that means in the first half, Ajay narrates a story about himself in which he is such an all-rounder extrovert. But this over excellence in every field makes him alienated in the classroom and gradually in the society. From midpoint till the last shot, that means in the second half, he is putting in simple terms how and what all triggered psychotic episodes in his life. So at the end, when he tries to conclude his narration, we'll ask ourselves what will happen in his life hereafter. Hence the title Anandaram. He himself states at the end that he must have missed some moments in both of these stories. But he gives us no other option also, other than fusing both these stories in our minds once the end credits roll. So, though the movie concludes on screen, it will create some tension in us. We viewers will tend to project this fused version in our mind as long as we are not distracted. This is the beauty of this movie. Now, ask yourself, is it very easy to narrate a story subjective to someone who is blanketed in psychosis? I mean, not the way somebody else looks at him or her. It is not easy to crack his or her original perspective and do justice to it. It's such a humongous task. This would have been easier if the medium is a novel or a short story, because the author can write almost close to what would be going on in such a protagonist's head. This must be one reason why he adapted this novelistic approach to the screenplay and discovered this particular nonlinear form to structure the narration. This, in fact, has inspired hell lot of writers to go wild in terms of form and structure, if and only if the idea and plot demands it. Now, let's go back to yours, the Pulp Fiction. The movie is divided into five chapters. Part 1, the prologue. Part 2, Vincent Vega and Marcellus Wallace's wife. Part 3, the Gold Watch. Part 4, the Bonnie situation. And Part 5, the epilogue. Film begins with a hostage situation in a diner by crime partners Pumpkin and Honey Bunny. Then after the opening credits, in different chapters, we get to watch the stories of Vincent, Jules, and Butch. It finally takes us back to where the charade began, the diner. So, does this mean the movie defies the concepts of three act structure? No. if you want to learn a bit more. Consider the inciting incident where Jules and Vince are saved miraculously from a hail of bullets when they go to an apartment to retrieve a briefcase for their crime boss Marcellus. Let this be the tree from which the rest of the incidents are branching out. In such a way, you can practically break down 5 chapters into 7 narrative sequences. Then you will be able to figure out the structure and the big picture easily. 1. Prologue, the diner, sets up the space and time, also the couple who want to rob the diner. 2. Sets up characters, space, and time to narrate the next few chapters, mainly Vince and Jules. Chapter 3. The Vincent Vega and Marcellus Wallace wife. 4. The setup of the next chapter, which includes a flashback about the heirloom watch and the current situation of Butch the boxer. 5. The gold watch. Butch goes back to his apartment to get back his heirloom, ends up killing Vince, later the shootout with Marcellus, and finally they get tied up by 2 creeps who are into some badism shit. So how Butch helps Marcellus to kill those creeps and ends their beef. That forms a finale of 5th sequence. The 6th sequence is we go back in time to the briefcase story again. That is the continuation of sequence 2, the miracle, the one which I mentioned before. This makes Jules resort to the redemption path. And finally, the 7th sequence, the epilogue, the continuation of the first sequence where we go back to the diner and continue how Vince tries to be a good shepherd and lets Pumpkin and Honey walk away with his money. Now, why did Tarantino opted this circular novelistic approach for Pulp Fiction? Because ultimately, it also has a cause and effect, the sins and redemption, yin and yang. It's circular like the cyclical life. If you can imagine Pulp Fiction in chronological order, well, that would have ended up as one of the most disastrous, cliched, bizarre movie. It still is bizarre, but with the circular narrative, Tarantino could successfully add more layers creatively and keep the audience on the edge of their seats, guessing what's going to happen next. Now, if you can similarly think about Anantaram, can you imagine the reliable or unreliable stories he narrated in chronological order and give it a feature film structure? It would have failed for sure. And most importantly, like I said before, Psychosis never led someone like Ajayan to narrate the same story twice. He will miss bits and pieces. He narrates both the tales up until the current situation. That's where all his versions would converge. Do you know what was the initial thought behind Anandaram? His wife, who was pregnant with their daughter back then, came back from hospital and said a story she heard. Somebody ditched an infant in the hospital, and one of the doctors eventually adopted the infant. This lit the bulb in his head initially and started from there. This idea later became the opening scene of the movie too, because he had to show how the alienation got sprouted right from the birth. I don't even think anybody else in India other than Adoor sir would have opted such an idea to be developed back in 80s. But even if that happened, they would have tried the style of novel writing and made the movie entirely rely on his monologue or with his dialogues with somebody else. But Adur Sar has used monologues very rarely, just enough to initiate the visual storytelling. At the end, he goes back to the childhood for the third time, and this happens.
ഓർക്കാത്തതും പറയാത്തതും ബാക്കിയുണ്ടെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നു. 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 23, 25, 27, 29, 31, 33, 35, 37. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38.
The first time that confused look haunted me. And I was like, no, 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 keep talking. Are you kidding me? Don't fade out. I mean, I was that restless. I'm not exaggerating, seriously. Because I never wanted it to end. I needed to know more about this guy. I mean, what would have happened? This exactly is the reason why it's named hereafter. If you would ask my opinion, the National Award winner critic Bharadwaj Rangan is the best at what he does. He compared the unreliable narration of Ajayan with the narration of the protagonist of the novel The Catcher in the Rye. He cites certain examples from Anantaram to point out that too. So both Anantaram and Pulp Fiction have the novelistic approach as well as the circular narrative structure. Anantaram came out at least 7 years before Pulp Fiction. So if someone blabbers that Tarantino formed this style or so, you know what to do. I must repeat something. Both these masters tried this style because the idea and plot demanded such a form. So let me wind up this episode. Thanks a lot for sharing the links to your friends. I'm quite surprised to say this, but I have at least 50 subscribers now. And YouTube says the views are shooting up. Kindly keep doing it, because until and unless I can grow this as a community where I get comments and thoughts which will help me in return, how am I going to benefit from any of these? So what are you waiting for? Go watch these movies again. I just found a better quality print of Anantaram in YouTube, which is not a TV rip. So use this opportunity before they take it down. Seriously, go watch it right now. Bye.